I call them spirit guides because I don't know what else to call them. So I didn't have a visual of them. I just was aware of some form of a spirit or entities. But it could also be that I saw them at the time, but they wiped that from my memory. So it's hard to know exactly. So my memory of it is the spirit entities that communicated with me and with each other. And so that part, I guess I got to keep.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
I've heard other people say funny stories, hearing the spirit world and, during our near death experience, or somebody said we forgot to wipe her or wipe him. Some kind of mechanism is going on where we're not supposed to understand all of it.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Your Superior Self. Tonight, I am joined again by the returning champion, Dr. Lotti. She's joining us because I could not get enough of her story. And then she leaves me on a cliffhanger in the last episode about the most embarrassing story of her life. And I was like, you know what, Dr. Lotti, you have to come back on. So I'm very, very grateful that you're here tonight. So thank you very much, Dr. Lotti.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me back. It's a pleasure.
So I don't know well, I do know where we left off. I'm just trying to think about what's the best way to kind of bring it all in and really start this bad boy and really light the fire of your journey, right? Like, because I feel like it pulls me in every time I listen to it, and it's like I just feel like a fly drawn to the light. I feel like a soul being pulled towards the light. Um, why don't you go ahead and get started, right? Like, so we talked a little bit about your second near death experience, I think. Maybe not. Well, if you want to go into that, that's fine. But wherever you want to go.
Right. I can't quite remember if we talked about the second near death experience, but I can tell it briefly so that people can catch up. The second near death experience happened 2 years after my first one. And I was really sick. I had something called idiopathic aplastic anemia, which means that your bone marrow is suppressed, so you're not making enough blood cells. And so during this second experience, I left my body and I just tumbled through darkness, more like, flying through space in the Star Wars movie. It's more that kind of a feeling. And I get to this place that I call the mid station. And I call it the mid station because I was aware that you could go higher, but you could also go lower. There were different levels. But when I get there, I hear the most beautiful music. But you can't make this music on the earth plane because it's too beautiful. There is nothing that can make that sound. And I tried to recreate the sound I had heard for a week on our synthesizer, and there was not one sound that had this beautiful music. So I hear this most beautiful music and I look around to see where the sound is coming from. And I turn to the right and I see a log cabin literally floating in space. So I turn and I open the door to look inside, but it's empty. And then I turn to the left and I see a mirror image of the same log cabin on my left. And I open the door, I look inside, but it's empty. So then I become aware of this growing white light that's coming from behind me, like you're standing in a spotlight or the white fog is moving in. And as I turn around, I see an outline of angels in this white light. And the music is coming from the angels. But I don't believe in angels. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in anything still, even though I had a near death experience 2 years earlier. But I was still wondering, could that have been something my brain did? Was it some form of hallucination? I was still working through what that experience was. So here I am standing in this light, but this light is this pure, unconditional love. And you can call this light God, or you can call it source, but it is what we come from, we're part of. And it's just pure, unconditional love. And so you probably have heard people talk about the universe is built on love. I couldn't agree more. It is, because this is just pure love, and this is the source. This is where we come from. And as I'm standing and looking at the outline of angels, I become aware of two spirit guides, and they communicate with each other. And the one spirit guide says to the other, "What is she doing here? She can't be here. She has to go back." And I said, "No, no, no, wait a second. How can this be? How can I be outside my body and still be me?" Because it's taken me, I've been spending 2 years now trying to figure out how could I be outside my body during the first near-death experience in the ER. And the spirit guide says, "Well, if I told you, you wouldn't remember." So there's some kind of mechanism where they can control or what you get to remember when you go back. But then it's like I'm standing on the moon and I'm looking down on Earth, and there is what I call the silvery, glittery fishnet around the Earth. And I called it a fishnet because I grew up in Sweden, rowing the boat for my grandmother, laying fishnets in the ocean. And we didn't have Google back then, because this is in 1994. So now you can just Google grid around the Earth, and you can see all these pictures that look very similar to what I saw. And he said, the spirit guide said that everything on Earth is connected to each other, but everything on Earth is connected up to this grid. And with that information, I got sent back. So then my whole life has changed because of the two near-death experiences, especially the second one, because it created an understanding not only that we have eternal life, but I also understood that now this is real. I keep leaving my body. And so now I've looked into it more and more about near-death experiences and spiritually transformative experiences. But that connection is, we are all connected. When everything is connected, all of humanity is connected, and we're connected to the animals, to the trees, to the plants, because we are all one consciousness. And we know this from the global consciousness studies, that we can tune in to global consciousness. And they have meters around the Earth that monitors these things and tells us when there are big events like 9/11 and things like that. These meters on the consciousness readers around the world change, because our global consciousness, we're all connected into that same consciousness. And we know from physics also that everything is connected. So that has really changed the where I'm going with my own life and the work that I do today. Because as I work a lot with ancestral healing, I can see that connection. And not only are we connected to the ancestors with our DNA, but we're also connected through that time and space, through that grid, through the atoms. And we know from physics, and the people who got the physicists that got the Nobel Prize in 2022 were three physicists that show that what happens to one atom happens to the other atom. Once they have met, they're entangled. But our whole science is moving in that direction of that entanglement. But then when you work with ancestral healing, you also see that entanglement, because we are so entangled with our ancestors that we have the perception that we are separate, and that, we go through life and we think we're so separate from everybody else. But the truth is that the problems and the issues that we face in life are typically ancestral. And so when I work with people in ancestral healing, I see those patterns, and they repeat many times for hundreds of years. It's just generation after generation that these patterns repeat. And people have issues with, I have a problem stepping into myself. I don't know what the problem is, or I feel alone in the world. I have relationship issues. It doesn't really matter what it is, but it's almost always in some ancestral component to that, and how those patterns came about.
Wow. So the spirit guides, right? Did you recognize them as spirit guides?
I call them spirit guides because I don't know what else to call them. So they were, I didn't have a visual of them. I just was aware of some form of a spirit or entities. But it could also be that I saw them at the time, but they wiped that from my memory. So it's hard to know exactly. So my memory of it is the spirit entities that communicated with me and with each other. And so that part, I guess I got to keep.
Mhm.
Right. So
Mhm.
I've heard other people say funny stories, hearing the spirit world and, during their near death experience, or somebody said we forgot to wipe her or wipe him. It's, some kind of mechanism is going on where we're not supposed to understand all of it, because we are having a living experience here on earth in this incarnation. We're here to learn whatever lessons, I think some of them that we signed up for, but that that lesson that we signed up for is really what we're here, and we can't know how everything works, because then that wouldn't be a lesson.
Mhm. What about like the recognition that, right? Like, or you have this near death experience and you see guides. Like, was there any recognition of them? Was there any like, I kind of know who you are, but I'm not really sure.
No.
No.
I
So
wish.
just total
No,
strangers,
it
huh?
was just, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Total strangers. And where I was at that time in my life, I was still trying to understand if life is eternal. Is it really eternal, or is this something that happens in my brain? Well, now we know it's not something that happens in the brain, because science had already disproven that, because you can have no electric, anything on the electromagnetic fields when they check your brain. And so we know that people who are in a deep coma, the brain is not responding, they're still reporting near death experiences when they come back. So we know it's not the brain that's making it up, but this was back in 1994. So we didn't know us. We
Hmm.
might have known us. We might have known back then. I'm not sure,
Who
because it
knows?
was hard to find the information without the internet. I had
Sure.
to go to the library and search for any kind of clues in different departments of the library, trying to figure out, why is there no time on the other side. And I remember reading a Stephen Hawking book on time, trying to understand why there's no time. But it's difficult to figure out what books to get in the library to figure out what happened.
Hmm. So no time. Was there any pearling gates?
Not that I saw, but maybe other people see them.
Well, I feel like it's just unique to the individual, right? Like, I feel like if you do have a strong dogma, like, I feel like you'll see some of that when you pass over, right? I just feel like that our belief systems definitely play a factor in what we experience in the afterlife.
Right. I think it can. And so I got to see things that I didn't believe in. So I didn't believe there was a God. I didn't believe in a greater source. I didn't believe in angels. I didn't believe in spirit guides. But that's what I experienced. But
Hmm.
that was for me to experience. Right. So
What did the
it
angels
helped
look
me.
like, right? Like, what
It
did
was just
they?
an outline of angels. So I knew it was angels, but it was just like the silhouette of the angels in the white light.
Hmm.
But I knew instantly that they were angels, because, like the wings, but I could, no facial features, just in the white fog. Best description. The very bright white light fog was that outline, and the music came from that. And I know somebody showed me what's that blue book, Miracles, a book of miracles, is that what it's called? The big
I
thick blue, I
think
think that's
so.
what it is. And there is in that book, there is a chapter called The Forgotten Song. And that is the closest description I've ever come to what that music was, because it was hauntingly familiar. It's
Hauntingly
like,
familiar.
yeah, it was as if I knew it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Could you
And
play it
so
if
that
could you play it if you learned how to play like music in
I
that way?
tried. I started the synthesizer for a week, trying to figure out what that melody was that I had heard. And I took piano lessons for like 10 years, and I still could not find the sound and quite the right notes of it. Was just too beautiful.
There's a guy who had a near death experience or something, and he came back and learned how to play the piano and like created an or not an orchestra, created a
Oh yeah, I know him.
I can't remember his
He's
name.
British. He lives in
Really?
England. I forget his name. He got stuck under a train. He fell,
Yeah.
his coat got stuck in the train
Hmm.
and he got dragged under the train.
Have you heard
And
his
he is
stuff?
yeah, it's on the internet. I interviewed him on my podcast. I forget his name now. Um, but it's a fascinating story. He can compose music when he came back, even though he has no knowledge of notes. It's fascinating. And paintings, he can paint. There are weird things that happen though. I learned to play the guitar in a week, and we had people over and everybody was like, wow, I didn't know you could play the guitar. How many years have you been playing? And I said, well, actually, I've only been playing for a week. So I just learned it. So weird things like that, I think, can happen where all of a sudden you tune into something and pick it up more quickly than you otherwise would have.
Yeah. And then you came back with psychic abilities, evidential mediumship. I've asked you off air, like, do you think they were enhanced, or do you think it was like new abilities? And I think you got two answers, but um, I feel like you've already had I think everybody has these essentially, right? Like I just think it gets kind of muddied over with our belief systems and our conditioning, right? I feel like everyone, if we were like pure consciousness coming into this world, if we were like 3 or 4 years old and somebody was working with us, I feel like we had these abilities and we can make them stronger, right? But because of society and because of the way that we live our lives in this Western mindset, we forget about that or we dumb it down, right?
Absolutely. I think everybody has the capacity of connecting. It's just a matter of learning how and tuning in and understanding how it works. So, I tell people the best thing you can do is just meditate, sit in meditation every day, make it a regular practice. Any medium that I have ever met that works as a medium will tell you the exact same thing. And I've interviewed a lot of mediums on my own podcast, studying at Arthur Findlay College in England, and it comes back to the same thing. It's all about sitting in the science, sitting in the silence. But I look at it like when you sit in that silence, when you go through the car wash, you take the antenna down or in the car, I was going to get ripped out. And then you come out, you raise that antenna back up. But it's kind of like that when you sit in that silence and you create that stillness within you, that's when you raise your antenna because you have to be really quiet and really still because you're tuning into something that's not in this dimension. So how are you going to tune into it and hear what's on the other side? It's not like you have a cell phone reception, that those messages come many times in a split second. I'll get a flash image sometimes, or I'll hear something. And then I have to ask them, sometimes there'll be something I'm doubting. Could it be that, they're showing me, why did they keep showing me dolphins? What's up with these dolphins? Talking about something else. And all of a sudden you see dolphins. So then I ask the spirit again, and I say, please show me that again. And then I see it again. And sometimes I do it 3 times. Please show me that again. Okay, dolphins it is. So I'm just going to say it now. And then, of course, it makes perfect sense to the client. They're like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. The dolphins, we were, going to do this, or we were at SeaWorld or whatever connection it is. But sometimes, that reception comes when it comes through, it's many times just, it comes in split seconds. And once you grab that message and you have that, they wait and they're ready to get the next message. So it's really fun when you do something called double linking and you have two mediums communicating with the same spirit. So it's really fun. So one person starts and says, okay, I have a man with me, and this man is in his 50s. He's a father. And I believe he worked maybe in, with criminals or police or something like that. And then once that medium is done saying the message they got, you're already getting that same message. And then you get that next message. And then the next medium takes over and gets the next message, and it goes back and forth. So it's fascinating because we know that you can tune into the same spirit, but also there are people that are incredible artists. So when I studied at Arthur Findlay College, the teachers will often demonstrate. And one of the teachers, her name is Sue. She's an incredible artist. And I believe she's worked with the Queen, worked with Queen Elizabeth in England. I mean, she's very, very famous. And one of the teachers will be on the stage communicating with somebody in the spirit world that belongs to one of the people in the audience. Let's say it's somebody's father. And then Sue will be drawing the image that the other medium is communicating with, and it will be a picture of that person. And they will recognize that that person in the audience, which is just some random person, will say, yep, that's my father. And so she sees the exact way that person looks. So it's just fascinating. But it also proves that the spirit world is alive and well.
So when
Because
you
we
say
can't
spirit,
connect.
right? I'm sorry to cut you off. When you say spirit, right? Is that the same thing as God, or is that something different?
Yeah. So the spirit is the soul of a person that lived on earth. So when you die, you go to the spirit world, and people will say, hey, I got him, he came in as a message. We call them messages because they're bringing a message to the people that are still in this dimension. So the spirits are loved ones that have departed this plane and gone on to the spirit world.
Mm-hmm.
The soul, the spirit.
What's the end game, right? Like of a spirit? Is it to rejoin the one, or is it to continue to evolve? Well, I guess it's the same thing, right? Evolve until you're the one.
Right. I mean, so then we get into reincarnation. So do we reincarnate and then come back? Which we also already know that that's true because they've done a lot of research for at least 50 years on reincarnation studies. And even Netflix and all those people have done documentaries of some really, really famous cases. And many times children will remember, in some cultures, it's recognized in some cultures that when the child is 3, they remember a lot of their past life. So the parents on purpose ask a lot of questions to see what they can learn about the child. But here in the United States, maybe some people do, but I would say most people don't in the Western world. But that's definitely, something that comes back because when you look at the reincarnations, we all know that we've lived before. We've been the good person, we've been the bad person, we've been male, we've been female. We've had all these many, many past lives. And then when you look at ancestral healing, for example, with the issues going back in time, is it the same soul family that keeps reincarnating to try and resolve those issues? And when you're living in this day, so let's say you're the client and you come to me and say, I have these issues. And we say, okay, well, it seems to be coming from your grandfather or your great grandfather because it goes up the line. Your dad had the same issues. Your grandpa had the same issues. How do I know whether you were actually your own great grandfather? Maybe now you came back to resolve the issues that you started as a great grandfather. You were terrible. You were terrible to your employees. You were a terrible father. You were a terrible husband. And now you come back and you still have the same issues, but you're the one who created them in that previous life. You know what I'm saying? So how do we know who we were? We don't always, but you can have you can have regression and remember some of your past lives.
Have you experienced like a future life, right? Like since time is not linear on the other side, can you tap into like I don't know, 100 year from now, Dr. Lotti, and see what's going on?
They have not showed me that yet, though I have seen past lives in meditations and then figured out that that's who I was. And I meditated. So it's 2 separate meditations. And I saw this row of Buddha statues. I was like, wow, this brick wall and all these Buddha statues in front of it. And then I knew there was a town behind this wall. And then there was a building or a monastery in there. And I knew I had lived there. And I knew I came to this place as a young boy and that I was 10 years old. And I had to go live with the monks because my parents had been killed. I said, wow, this is really weird. What is this? And this is a couple of years ago now. And it kept haunting me. So after a couple of days, I said, I'm going to start Googling this. I wonder if this exists somewhere. So I Googled row of Buddha statues. And after a while, it came right up. I was like, wow, that looks exactly what I saw. So then I learned that was in southeast Thailand. And it was part of a town that was called Ayutthaya back then. It's like the 13th century or something, 13th to 16th century. And then a lot of time went by. It was probably a whole year. And I decided I should see if I could go back to that place. So I set the intention. I said to the spirit world, all right, I want to go back to that place. Show me something else about this so I can see, where this place is or if it's real. So I went back into meditation and I saw this large golden Buddha statue. But again, it was really strange because behind this very large Buddha, golden Buddha, it wasn't a small, it was ginormous, it's huge. But behind it, it looked like mosaic windows, like colorful windows in the background, kind of the old glass in the old churches. Back in the day, they had those colorful glass. It was
stained
that
glass,
kind.
yeah.
You're right. I look stained glass, and then it was a big hall. But I saw myself there as a tourist, and there were other people present from this life, and I was on a tour, a guided tour, in this place. And then there was this whole other big, glittery room, and I was like, wow, I wonder what that is. So then I asked my daughter and her boyfriend, because he's a trained Buddhist. I said, you guys know the place that has this large golden Buddha statue? And he said, honestly, I don't, but maybe Google it. And within 5 minutes, that image came up. And it turns out that this is a place in Thailand. It's a glass temple. And this large Buddha, so the reason I saw the glass behind it is because the whole structure is made out of glass. And in that structure, there is this very, very large Buddha statue, and they hold tours there today because that is still standing. So I knew that was something from this time. So then, 2 days goes by, and I'm like, I want more information. So I set the same intention. All right, take me back to that place. I want to see, what else I can learn. So I went back to this place again. And this time I was standing as a young boy by a river. But the small river, they had these kind of old wooden boats, but the people that came off the boats looked like Europeans. I'm like, I'm in Thailand and I'm seeing all these old European people with old, ways they dressed back in that time frame. And they were bringing goods, offloading goods for trade. So, wow, this is really strange. Where? And so I hadn't really, figured out exactly where it was yet. So this led me to, okay, I got to find out where this is, because I knew that temple existed. And then that led me to searching online, trying to search on tourists on Thailand. Every time I Googled something, it would say back out, security warning. I said, all right, can't do that. So then I went on Amazon and online and just searching on books for Ayatuya. I got to learn more. What, is this true? So I found this book. I have it right here. It's called The Lord of the Golden Tower on Amazon. There was one copy. It was the only book that I could find that talked about Ayatuya. Only one copy from some Goodwill store somewhere in the United States. So I was like, well, that's the only book. So I'm going to get that book. Then I got the book. Sure enough, there is a map in there in the book that shows the river coming in from the ocean, talks about the trade, and that because of the river, Ayatuya was a big place for trade back then. And they would bring goods from other parts of the world to trade. And it was it was a really good location for this place. But also in this book, it talks about the young boy, and the young boy, his father was killed, his mother was killed. His father was the king, and a commoner took his life, and the commoner became the king. And then this little boy ruled the country for, I think, 10 days. And then this king, King Prasad was his name, the commoner, he had already killed the boy's father, the boy's mother, and then he also ended up killing this boy. And so that's why the boy was sent to live with the monks, because his parents were killed. So there it was, like everything that I had seen in that meditation now was verified. So, and I think it's for me to share this story, because I think a lot of people have stories like this. They see things in their meditation, they dream things, they go places in their dreams, but they don't know if it's true because it took a little bit of work to investigate this. But I was so curious. It was so detailed. But I think that's also for me to share with other people so that other people become aware. Yeah, you were probably alive in all these other lives, and you just have to tune in. And for some people, they may never get any messages about it because it's not part of their journey in this life. And other people might get a lot of messages because it's part of their spiritual journey. Just like, why do some people become a lawyer and another person becomes a car mechanic? Because that's their path. That's their journey in this life. And some people are supposed to work as mediums, and other people are supposed to not have any spiritual experiences. And other people are supposed to tune into the spirit world and communicate with the spirit world just for themselves, right? But we all have the ability. We all have that ability to tune in to our past lives and to the spirit world because we are spiritual creatures.
I love all of that. But can the mechanic become whatever he wants to be, right? Like, if he awakens to his true potential and the idea that we are more powerful than what we believe, can the mechanic become, I don't know, can he become an author? Can he become a scientist? Can he become a actor or actress, right? Like, can he completely change his reality?
I think if we have the capacity to do anything we want to do, it's just putting our minds to it and say, this is what I'm going to do. And the more intention and the more you believe that you can do it, the easier it will be. But it's also, the ticket, if you didn't pull the right ticket. So I was a programmer in my youth. I worked for IBM as a programmer and systems analyst. So talk about a very systematic approach to life. And then, everything changed with my near-death experiences. Though I always wanted to be a physician. I always wanted to help other people. I knew I was a healer since I was 3 years old. I played with that stethoscope. I wanted to help people. I would go to the grocery store with my mom and look at the old man walking with a cane, wondering, why is he limping? Why does he need a cane? What happened to his leg? I wonder if I can help him. I wonder if I can heal him. That was always with me. But then my life took me on this other journey. So maybe we have different paths or options in our life and we end up on the wrong train track. They said, oh, she's going to have her near-death experiences now. She totally missed the boat. So going down this
reset
right?
button, reset.
Pick up the train and put it on the right track. But who knows, what's really part of that. But I think we incarnate, I think, to a large extent to have certain kinds of experiences.
Sure. Have you ever communicated with what we consider God or Jesus?
So I would say, so communicating with God, I call it source, just because I feel that religions create a division between the people on earth. There is no one God that's better than another God. The religions were created by the people who live on earth. Somebody wrote that down. Somebody made a book, the Bible, or another book, the Quran. A person put those words, even if they had a spiritual experience, they decided what's going to be written down. And over time, all the different religions and even books, right? When you look at old books that were written 40 years ago, then they rewrite them. And sometimes they lose the message because the modern translation in the modern world. But it's the same thing with our religion and the books of religion. Things have been lost. Things have never been put in the Bible to begin with. It's what they wrote that 2,000 years ago. So whatever was pertinent in life then, that's what was decided to be put in that book. So we have to take religion with a little bit of a grain of salt, because in the end, we're all one. And so there is no one religion that's better than another religion, but we have to learn to coexist and accepting each other's religions and each other's beliefs. There is no right and wrong way. So I don't like to call it God. I call it source, communicating with source. But when you look at it, we're all part of that. We are all part of source. We're all part of the global consciousness. We all have a higher self. So it's, we're not,
Constant communication.
we're all part of it. We all
Mhm.
have access to it.
Well, what about the persona of Jesus or Yeshua or Jeshua or whatever you want to call him? Like, have you ever had like a conversation with him?
With Jesus,
Hmm. I don't
we
know.
have to think back now because I was confirmed. I went to, I was Lutheran, born Lutheran, and confirmed. I didn't really believe in any of that. Now, if you say, have you ever conversed with Jesus? Do I always know who I'm conversing with? When you converse, is that God or is it Jesus or is it a
Mhm.
spirit guide or is it the spirit world? How do we tell the difference of that guidance? It's not always that we know what it is that we're tuning into.
Can you build that relationship though, right? Like with source, can you strengthen that?
Right. So you build your relationship with source. It becomes part of your life. It is.
How do we strengthen it though, right? Is it through meditation? Is it through intention? Is it prayer? Is it, going out in nature? Like, is it all of the above? Like, how do we strengthen that
Yeah.
relationship and make it more intimate, but then also be able to receive messages?
Yeah. So it's all of the above. Being in nature, praying, meditating. Praying and meditating, there isn't always a big difference depending on how people meditate and how people pray. So sometimes I've found many people use those terms interchangeably. So they say, I meditated, but then when they start talking about it, it's more like a prayer,
Hmm.
right? So it doesn't really matter, setting the intention, meditating or praying, communicating telepathically with the spirit world, whether that is God, Jesus, or some other figure that you believe in. It doesn't really matter because it's all part of the same consciousness in the end.
Sure.
It's
Well,
all
I
all the
always hear
same.
about ascended masters, right? I always hear about Jesus. I always hear about archangels. I hear about angels. I mean, you
Mhm.
experienced 12 angels when you had a near death experience. So it's always been fascinating to me. Like, is there a hierarchy of consciousness that has a ranking system of like maybe not rank, but like more or less evolution? I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts?
If there's a ranking system in terms of who we connect with,
Or like just in general, right? Like an archangel, like Jesus, ascended masters, who else? Yogananda. I feel like he could have been an ascended master. I feel like who are some other, like Mother Teresa? She's got to be an ascended master, right?
yeah,
Mother Mary,
mhm, yeah,
uh, all of those guys.
mhm.
Like, I mean, I feel like we are working towards that, right? Like, I feel like we are.
Yeah, no, I feel so. I feel that too. I mean, we're in the process now of raising consciousness because we have to raise consciousness. We have to become more aware and wake up, or we're just gonna create our own extinction. So we have to learn to work together, and we have to, become more in tune with nature and not just use nature for our greed and money and politics, but we are part of nature versus we are using nature. We are, I mean, if you look at the people, if you look at your body, how many millions of blood cells do you have in your body or cells in general? But when you look at the world, all the people are like cells to the earth itself. And so
Hmm.
then all the elephants are a different kind of cell, all the horses are a different kind of cell, all the trees are a different kind of cell. So we have the whole world itself with all the creature and vegetation and everything that exists is all part of the system of earth, which is a living creature in itself, which is part of the universe or our galaxy, which is another living organism in space. So everything is alive, right? So we're all alive, and we know that, and we have our organs and our cells, but I think we have forgotten that we're also part of a bigger system, and that bigger system means all people. We are all in this same system, and it's
Hmm.
the earth.
That system can speak to us, right? Like in numbers. I see 444 quite a bit. 11 and 44 pop up quite a bit. Like, what does that mean? Do they mean anything, or is it just like source or consciousness speaking to us?
When things like that happen to me, I just Google it. I say meaning of 444 and see what comes up,
Mhm.
or meaning of, I would have meaning of deer standing on my driveway 3 days in a row. Why does the deer keep waiting for me every day? Or why does the squirrel show up every single day? And then, Google it and say, deer, spirit animal, or spiritual meaning of deer, or squirrel, or a raven, whatever animal or thing that you're seeing, because that's also the spirit world trying to bring messages to you and making you aware, making
Mhm.
you awaken your consciousness to tune in to the spirit world.
I feel like back in the day they were a lot easier, right? Like a white feather, and then as consciousness realizes that we have Google now, they're like, all right, let's make it a little bit tougher for him, right? Let's have the deer in his driveway 3 days in a row. He can just Google that and he'll figure it out.
Right. Right. But it teaches you to learn. It teaches you to listen. So for me, it was in the beginning, it was a lot of animals, finding feathers day after day. Um, and then it became, more serious. And I would hear, before I left my house, watch out for the red truck and get on the freeway. And then I knew it was the 17 coming down into Phoenix because I could see the mountains. I knew it was that freeway. So as soon as I got on the freeway, I kept watching for the red truck. And as they showed me the image before I left, I saw this red truck and it swerved completely all the way out to the left lane and then back into the right lane. And as I get on the freeway, I'm aware because the message was watch out for the red truck and then the swirl. So I keep driving, and all of a sudden I come up on a red truck. White first there's this white truck, black trucks, any trucks, but except the red one. All of a sudden, I'm approaching a red truck. So I know the warning sign I got right before I left, grabbed my keys and purse off the kitchen counter. So I'm sitting behind the red truck and I'm waiting for the car in front of me to pass the red truck completely, just in case that truck is going to swirl all the way to the left lane and then back into the right lane. And there is a railing on my left side. There's not really any way that I can go. So I sit behind this truck for quite a while and wait until there is space for me to pass. I wait for the car in front of me to have gone all the way passing the truck and leaving me space so that when it's my turn to go, I can pass the truck and go all the way in front of the truck. So I'm sitting behind the truck. I'm waiting for the car to get in front of the truck. The car in front of me clears. So he's now in front of the truck and I'm behind the truck. What does the truck do? It completely swirls all the way out in the left lane and then back in the right lane. I
Hmm.
mean, at that point, I was just like, oh my God, my spirit world, thank you. Because I would have gotten killed if I had been passing him at that moment. And then another time, maybe 6 months later, this is the year they had to watch out for car accidents. I was down in Scottsdale. I lived up in the mountains. So Scottsdale is part of Phoenix for people that are familiar. And I was heading back. I was visiting one of my kids down there, and I was going back up into the mountains where I was working at the time. And I'm getting ready. It's like 6 or 7 in the morning. I'm just grabbing my stuff, and I hear watch out for the accident. I'm like, what accident? That's all I got. Watch out for the accident. So I get on the freeway. It's early in the morning, but it's like 5 lanes easily on this freeway. And I'm just sitting in the second to the left lane, not the all the way to left, but kind of like more middle left. And I'm just being alert. I'm just watching cars. There's not that much traffic yet. And all of a sudden, a car passes me on the right and it catches my attention. And I said, wow, that looks like somebody got, it was like a BMW or Mercedes or something, but it was older. You could tell they were working on it. He passes me and my eyes are still on the car for whatever reason. And then I see his left rear wheel come off the car and then run across the highway. And I'm braking. I'm trying to not slam on my brakes because I'm going to lose control. So I'm braking as hard as I can, trying to avoid this tire. And literally, it was so close. It was probably an inch. It was right in front of my car. and it went off to the left median. But again, it was, if I hadn't paid attention, if I hadn't gotten the warning, I would just have been listening to music, driving along, boom, I would have gotten hit. So is that a warning to tell us to listen to our messages? Yes. So it can be life-changing, right? It can save your life if you listen to the messages. And I think at that point, when I got messages like that, it was for me to really tune in, and really they knew I was listening at this point, and they're telling me to keep listening. And after you've had many of these experiences, that when the spirit world speaks to you, or you're getting these messages, you better listen, because they're trying to tell you something. They're also teaching you. I call it the training wheels. You got like the training wheels on your bike, and you're going along, and they're giving you these different opportunities to learn and to tune in, and I start to understand that, okay, when the message comes this way, it's correct. I trust it. And so many, many years of all these different kinds of experiences taught me to trust in whatever message I get. And so now when I work as a medical medium, I'll say, this is what I heard right before the session, or as soon as they came on the screen, this is what I heard from the spirit world. And sometimes it can be a diagnosis, and I say, do you have this? And the person looks at me and says, I don't even know what that is. And I said, do you have these symptoms? They go along with this disease, and they'll say, yeah, I do. Those are the exact symptoms. And then all of a sudden we know what it is that's going on. But many times it happens with people who have been around the block, and they've seen many different doctors, and they keep falling through the cracks. Not the right tests have been run for whatever reason. So it's fascinating, but you learn. That's how we learn to trust, is just but it starts with things like, there's a squirrel every day. I keep seeing a squirrel every day. I see 444 every day. I see a pine cone in my driveway, but I don't even know where it's coming from because I don't have a pine tree. Right. But all these little ways is the spirit world tuning into you and trying to teach you something. Why do you always find a dime, or find, all these different scenarios?
Yeah. It's funny because like I keep coming across the character Bluey, right? My youngest daughter watches the show, and some of the parents on here you may realize this, right? Bluey is this cartoon character on Disney. I think it's Disney. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Disney. I don't know. I just walk in and it's on the show. But I see Bluey everywhere. I'll see Bluey, the character, on a car. I'll see Bluey, like a Bluey somewhere, like in an Instagram feed. Like, it's just crazy, right? And I'm not saying this out loud. So, because my phone, right, if it hears me, it will like, produce advertisements. So I'm not saying it out loud. I'm just, I just thought about that. I was just like, oh, that's a coincidence, right? Like, I saw Bluey, and then I'll see a car drive by, and there's a Bluey sticker. Oh, there's Bluey. And then I'll see Instagram. Oh, there's a Bluey advertisement. I'm like, what is going on right now, right?
Yeah, what's the message of Bluey?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to Google it.
Yeah, you're gonna have to learn what Bluey is all about, because they're trying to tell you something.
Sure. What do we have time for the most embarrassing story of your life?
I think so. I think we can squeeze that in.
Yeah.
So the most embarrassing story of my life is really funny. It's in my book as well. It's everybody's nightmare. So when I was in high school, and I grew up, first of all, I have to preface this with, I grew up in Sweden. And so it's a very different culture in Sweden. Here in the United States, if you bring home a boyfriend, the father, is waiting with a shotgun, and the kids will have to have sex in a car, park in a parking lot somewhere. But in Sweden, it's for the most part not like that. And I would say all my friends, so this is back in the 1970s. So I would say most of my friends their parents were okay with, if they were dating someone, it was okay to bring the boyfriend home or go to the boyfriend's house, because the parents would rather have their children safe, know that they're using protection if they're having sex, than being in some car somewhere, or where they might not be feeling safe. So it's a very different culture. It's very accepted. We have sex ed, co-ed, back when in the 1970s, co-ed, sex ed when I was 14, and all different condoms and creams, and it's all passed around. Everybody touches it, smells it, everybody laughs, makes jokes. The biology teacher took a condom and filled it with water, and it was ginormous. It filled the entire sink in the bio lab. And of course, we're 14, so we're all laughing hysterically, right? But it takes all that out of it because it's something natural. We are human beings. We can't procreate if we don't have sex. And so that is a very important message that the Swedish culture has done very well with. And also they teach you what it's like to raise a child for the first 5 years. So here I am. That was the preface. So here I am as a 17-year-old, as a junior in high school. And I'm dating an American who was an exchange student in my high school. And he was also, of course, petrified of just coming home with me. But he had met my parents now a couple of times. And it's late at night, or it's not that late. It's like 10 or 11. And we're in the living room. And I tell my boyfriend, my parents are upstairs asleep. Don't worry about it. And we were in the living room on the sofa. But to the living room, there is a glass door that leads out to the hallway, which is also the entrance into the apartment. I was raised in a high rise in an apartment, but it was 2 floors. So we're on the sofa, and now we have no clothes left. So I am completely naked on the sofa. My boyfriend is lying on top of me, and we hear the key in the door. And within, 2 seconds, my dad is standing on the other side of the glass door. My boyfriend levitated. I have never seen it. It's almost like a cartoon. Levitated off me backwards off the sofa, and he's bending over trying to pull his pants on, but he's mooning my dad who's standing on the other side of the glass door. And the lamp is swaying back and forth, and I'm just lying on the sofa, and my dad just lost it. He's just laughing, and I'm just lying on the sofa waving to my dad like, "Hi, Dad." I'm completely naked. So, and then we can hear the steps of my dad going upstairs, like he's stepping really hard on the steps, and he's laughing like all the way up the stairs. And my dad was a physician, so he was well aware of, and I was the last child. I was number 4 out of have three older brothers. But he knew that we were having sex, and he wanted me to be, protected more than anything else. But that was definitely the most embarrassing moment in my life.
Wow.
And my poor boyfriend, who I ended up marrying later, he was just dying because he was just, several layers, shades of red. Because for weeks, my dad would just toast him and wink. He's like,
he's seen the goods. He saw the goods.
Right.
Oh man.
But everybody's nightmare of having a parent walk in on them as a teenager.
Yes.
But luckily, I was blessed that my father was very understanding, and he, cared more about me being safe than anything else. So.
Maybe that's why Sweden's like one of the most happy places to live, right? Because everyone's kind of enjoying their sexual
and they
freedom.
have, and they have very few abortions or anything like that because people we're educated to protect ourselves. Versus in this country, it's very different.
It's very,
very different. Don't talk about it. And it's sad because it is part of being human is to have procreate. And so we need to understand what that process looks like and learn about it like we learn anything else. It's just being human.
Yeah, I have 2 daughters. I wish I could be as strong as maybe not as strong, but understanding as your father, because I feel like I don't know what I would do in that instance.
Well, now you know.
Maybe
you've
laugh.
Heard the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Laugh and point. I don't know. Like if I saw that, but that's crazy. You put that in your book, right? Like,
yeah, because it's awesome. Such a funny story.
That is funny. I bet, man, I can only imagine what your boyfriend felt like seeing that, right? Like just him levitating off of you, right? Like, and then trying to pull up his pants, like hysterical.
Yeah. Oh my God. Just so funny, and just his reaction, it was funny too. Because if it was, I don't know, if it would have been a Swedish guy, would he have reacted the same way? I'm not sure. Because it's also that, the American norms of what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do. And you're kind of caught in the act, which is different. It's a different, it comes from a different society.
Yeah, I'm a part of that society. I can,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Remind everyone where they can get the book, where they can find you and connect.
Yeah. My book is called Med School After Menopause, The Journey on My Soul. And it's to inspire people to follow their path. There is, I think, one chapter about what it was like to go to med school when you're 54. But the rest of the book is really the journey that happened after my near-death experiences, what the near-death experiences were like in more detail than I can cover here on the podcast. And then what that spiritual opening and awakening looks like, so that other people that read my book will be able to tune in themselves and open up their own spiritual abilities, because we are all tuned into that and we all have abilities to connect.
Mm.
And to learn more about me, you can go to drlotte.com, drlotte.com. And my book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and many different online platforms. It comes in paperback, ebook, and also audiobook.
Mm. Dr. Lotti, thank you so much for taking the time again. This has been amazing.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.